Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here in just a moment. Thank you for joining us today. Watching folks trickle in right now. We will go ahead and get started since we are at the top of the hour and want to be mindful of everyone's time. So let me start by sharing my screen, which you should have access to now. And we'll kick things off on a very important subject: shareholder advocacy, investing with purpose and principle. Today, we hope to share the following with you. Our goals and objectives are on your screen now. We're going to learn how investing can integrate faith, values, and financial power. Next up, discover how shareholder advocacy can influence corporate behavior. That is to say, promote ethical business practices, financial transparency, and social responsibility. A lot of folks are not aware of the tools available to them, and we'll go through those in very high level today, but hopefully start that conversation. And lastly, we'll help you understand how you as an investor can help steer companies toward better corporate behavior and alignment with Muslim values. I'm Joshua Brockwell, Investment Communications Director here at Azad Asset Management, and I head up our Shareholder Advocacy program. So happy to be with you again today to talk about this very important subject. Moving right along on the slides, quick overview of Azad Asset Management for anyone who may need a refresher. Here's a look at who we are. For almost 3 decades now, Azad Asset Management has been helping high-income professionals build their wealth in accordance with Islamic values. Today, we manage around $1.8, $1.9 billion for more than 1,500 families across the United States. We're a full-service financial planning and wealth management firm. Here's an overview of the services we provide on your screen right now. So basically, as your trusted wealth manager, our role is to guide you or help guide you through life's major financial decisions. What does that mean? It means helping you plan, problem solve, and stay aligned with your goals and your faith. We look at your entire financial picture, walk with you every step of the way, our Azad advisors, that is, leveraging the services shown on the screen as they become relevant to your financial plan. A quick note about recent recognitions and awards. Azad Asset Management was featured in Financial Advisor Magazine's list of top RIAs for 2025. It's one of a few recognitions we've received in recent months. We invite you to visit our website, azadasset.com, for more information about this and other awards, including the methodologies. So before we talk about how to use your investments to amplify your voice, which is why we've all gathered here today, let's get a better understanding, first off, of how to invest Islamically to begin with, what that means. So this is going to be a very high overview, just a couple of grounding slides to help get us in the right frame of mind before we dive into the nuts and bolts of advocacy. So this is the baseline articulation of Islamic investing on your screen now. Essentially, there should be fairness in your transactions. So before you have advocacy opportunities, you have to make sure that you're investing halal, because you wouldn't want to own something that's impermissible and then use those assets to try to effect a corporate change. The essential component of Islamic investing is that it remain halal. What does that mean? First up, no riba, or sometimes translated as usury or interest. The gain in an investment or transaction should be closely connected to risk. There should be no gharar, or excessive speculation or uncertainty. That includes games of chance, or maisir, which is gambling. So this will often fall into the category of speculative insurance contracts, financial derivatives, things of that sort. Lastly, and again, these are all very high-level concepts, there should be, in general, no exploitation or unjust dealings. So I'll mention also how we operate at Azad Asset Management. When we take a client's portfolio and we invest it according to our values. Those values are articulated basically by AOFI, which is the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. You'll see that logo on your screen now. AOFI is essentially the gold standard for Islamic finance worldwide. They represent 8 madhahib. They are a nonprofit body that comes together and creates essentially standards for Islamic finance and transactions around the world. Roughly 90% of Islamic financial transactions follow AOFI guidelines. If it's not AOFI compliant, chances are it's not Sharia compliant. And again, they set the guidelines, they make the rules, we follow the rules at Azad. But as part of that, we have sort of layers of Sharia compliance with AOFI guidelines at the core of that methodology. And those layers include an internal Sharia compliance officer or auditor. We have an active Sharia advisory board for those issues that are thornier and can't be dealt with by the internal compliance officer. And so if it's not a matter that can be resolved internally, so the day-to-day issues typically are, but if not, it would be kicked up to the Sharia advisory board, which is active, meets regularly. And we, as well as having those two layers, have an outside auditing firm come in and make sure that we are following AOFI guidelines in terms of our investment practices and calculating zakat, things of that sort. So again, AOFI is essential to Islamic investing, Islamic finance more broadly. Among other things, AOFI distributes those guidelines that I talked about for halal investing. In general, those guidelines screen out companies that profit from interest, alcohol, tobacco, gambling, adult entertainment, weapons of mass destruction, areas of conflict, insurance, things of that sort. In addition to looking at those lines of business I just mentioned to you, we also carefully examine financial ratios in accordance with AOFI guidelines. So Azad or any Islamic financial firm would not invest in companies whose debt ratios are greater than 30%. Companies also have to comply with other ratios regarding their interest-bearing investments, debt, liquidity. This is in keeping with the Islamic prohibition on the giving and taking of interest, as I mentioned before, also the buying and selling of debt, all founded on those AOFI guidelines, which of course come from ijtihad or jurisprudence within the Islamic tradition. I'll also mention here there's a sound financial argument to be made against investing heavily in indebted companies anyway. For example, bypassing stocks whose debt to market capitalization ratio exceeds 30% leaves us with a list of high quality names with capital to allocate. So it's just sometimes it's sound investment philosophy regardless. So with that, now that you've gotten a baseline understanding of what it means to invest Islamically, again, very high level, very general, just wanted to set the scene, but we now have to delve into the realm of shareholder advocacy. So sometimes companies that pass our screens still behave in ways that can be socially harmful. So they make it through the gauntlet of the AOFI criteria that I briefly outlined a moment ago, but there's still behavior that could be rectified. We can make them better corporate citizens, so to speak. So just because they're considered halal to invest in doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. That's where shareholder advocacy comes in. Shareholder advocacy is a way that investors can work to influence the actions and the policies of companies. Again, the ownership is important there. So as an owner in a company through their stock, you have certain rights and responsibilities. Let's take a look at these two encouragements to do good as a way of centering the conversation today. We know that the idea of enjoining good and forbidding evil is essential to our faith. And I'm here to explain how that can extend to our financial lives as well. And that's very important because all too often, I think people tend to place a wall between kind of personal religious devotion and ritual and our finances. And unfortunately, that really shouldn't be the case. Unfortunately, it's all too common, but in reality, there are ways to kind of bridge that gap and approach our lives more holistically and allow our deen to sort of be infused into all of our behaviors, including our financial transactions. So more on shareholder advocacy or activism, as we say there. The goal of shareholder activism is to influence the actions and policies of companies, simply put. There are many ways for shareholders to communicate with corporations. Here are some of the most common ones on your screen now. I will say that the most basic part of shareholder activism or advocacy is voting your proxies. So owning stocks, let's talk about that just for a moment. Owning stocks gives you the right to vote on a company proxy ballot, just as citizenship in a country gives you the right to vote in elections, oftentimes. Anyone who owns stock can vote proxies. So this is when mutual funds and asset managers, they vote proxies on behalf of their investors. So if you're concerned about ethical issues in investing, it's a good idea to find out how your mutual fund company votes. You can find Azad's proxy voting guidelines on our website. I will say basically that proxies are a list of propositions or proposals from the company, ranging from anything from executive compensation to whether or not a company should pollute on a mass scale. It really runs the gamut. So in addition to proxy voting, another level of activism is to send an investor letter with the goal of engaging in dialogue with the company on a particular issue. This is often a very, very fruitful avenue of engagement. To increase their impact, investor letters may often be signed by institutions that manage assets like Azad. It's more common to send an investor letter when there's a reasonable expectation that the company would be willing to engage in a dialogue about the issue. I can say that we have at Azad have engaged in letter writing, sometimes to great success, other times not so much. But we've urged managements of several public companies, most recently to keep their diversity initiatives intact, despite pressure to end them. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. And we're happy to report that many of those engagements have been fruitful and they have retained their diversity programs. Lastly, in addition to voting proxies and sending investor letters, if it's unlikely that the company would be willing to engage in a dialogue to reach a mutually beneficial solution, then the situation may call for filing a shareholder resolution, which is one of those proposals that ends up on a proxy statement to be voted on at an annual meeting. So on the subject of shareholder resolutions, one common way to take action for the public good as a shareholder is to propose these resolutions to the company's management to be brought to a vote. And again, this is at the company's next annual general meeting, typically. A successful proposal, and this again is a right that you have as a shareholder, provided that certain requirements are met. A shareholder proposal that's successful often leads to a dialogue that addresses the concerns raised in the resolution. Recent corporate history has made clear that institutional investors like Azad Asset Management and other organized groups of investors who share a perspective often carry significant weight. Major corporations have changed their environmental and workplace policies in response to shareholder pressure. I can speak from personal experience on this. I've seen it happen, especially pressure from faith-based financial firms like ours. So Azad Asset Management has selected several issues for focus, primarily the ones you see on your screen right now. Since 2023, we've placed special emphasis on Palestinian rights and corporate support of the Gaza war. So human rights and protecting human rights have become particularly important for us over the last couple of years. But we've been working on it for quite some time, as you'll see when I go over issue areas in just a moment. But before we do that, let me just talk very quickly about the nuts and bolts of filing a resolution. Some of the basic requirements for doing that are on your screen now. Because Azad Asset Management has been filing resolutions for roughly a decade on behalf of our clients, we have a great deal of experience in how to write a strong shareholder proposal that will pass muster at the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, which will often adjudicate these things and decide if a company has to include them in their proxy materials. And we know how to get shareholder support for the resolution at the annual general meeting. But generally speaking, what's on your screen now is the baseline articulation of requirements for anybody who's an investor. These conditions have to be met in order to file a resolution. You can only do one per year. You have to meet the filing deadline, and you have to have certain thresholds. You have to meet certain thresholds when it comes to stock that you hold. So typically, to file a resolution, you would need to own a company's stock for 1 year if you have $25,000, 2 years if you have $15,000, or 3 years if you have $2,000 worth of that company's stock. So relatively low filing thresholds. The real trick is when you get into the issue of making sure that it can pass muster at the SEC and then starting to work to get out the vote at the annual general meeting. So it helps to have institutional support like us at Azad. So on your screen now are some specific examples of how we've engaged with corporations and how we've encouraged them to change their behavior over the years. Again, we've been doing this for quite some time, 10 years now. Some of the recent engagements that I'm particularly proud of include our work there on the left-hand side of your screen. You'll see we've worked with Thermo Fisher, the biotech medical device maker, asking them to see sales to areas of China where human rights violations were reportedly prevalent, specifically in Tibet. Think also of Western China, the Xinjiang region, the Muslim majority area there. Thermo Fisher was selling DNA kits, which basically allowed the authorities there to create a genetic profile of individuals, which obviously there are all sorts of human rights issues associated with that. And they agreed, thanks to pressure from Azad, but also other like-minded groups, responsible investor groups and faith-based groups, they agreed to stop selling those DNA testing kits to the authorities in those regions. I'll also mention just one other very quickly on your screen now on the right side. It's Chevron. We've worked with them for many, many years. We were originally the sponsor of a resolution requesting that they end their involvement in Myanmar. Myanmar, of course, is an area that was home to a large program of ethnic cleansing. Unfortunately, human rights violations were abundant there. Chevron was the largest U.S. investor in the country, and we argued that they were indirectly financially supporting very horrific crimes. And ultimately, we secured a sizable donation to relief organizations, specifically for the Muslim minority there, the Rohingya, who were the victims of many of those brutal crimes. And ultimately, others took our resolution, and it resulted in the withdrawal of Chevron from the country altogether. So very positive things can happen when you work as an investor with a goal in mind toward a positive outcome. I'll also just mention very quickly on the subject of Palestine, there's some examples of our work on Palestinian issues on your screen right now. Even though we've become, as I said, increasingly focused on Palestinian rights over the past few years, we've been longtime advocates, as seen by our work in 2019, pushing Microsoft and financial backing of facial recognition software in the occupied territories, and also our successful campaign to pressure General Mills to abandon a Pillsbury plant on disputed land in East Jerusalem. Those are mentioned on your screen as well. And that was done in concert with another faith group, American Friends Service Committee, Quaker organization. And just last year, I'll also mention that we engaged with Meta and Microsoft on the suppression of pro-Palestinian content online. Our work with Meta is ongoing, so more on that later this year, inshallah. But we're happy to report that our conversations with Microsoft helped to get Palestinian Outlook and Hotmail accounts reinstated. Just this past year, I'll also mention we've had meaningful conversations with Microsoft around their reported support of the IDF and its campaign in Gaza. Our shareholder resolution asking them to report on their human rights due diligence procedures was voted on December 5th of last year, and we're pleased to report also that we were part of the shareholder group that encouraged the company to stop assisting in mass surveillance of Palestinian communications and storing their data on Microsoft servers in Europe. Microsoft recently announced that it was ending that practice, and that's, we believe, in part thanks to shareholder pressure. So you'll see last year we really focused heavily on big tech, Microsoft, Meta, and Alphabet, and you'll see the actions and the results on your screen now. I'll also mention that we've done other work. I alluded to our letter writing campaigns to encourage companies to maintain their diversity policies. We've done this at Merck, Coca-Cola, and Levi's. All three companies, as I think I mentioned previously defeated their anti-DEI proposals at their annual meetings, which is great news. We're also beginning the process of working with Oracle in light of some particularly disturbing reports around a hostile workplace for pro-Palestinian employees there. We're looking at possibly filing a resolution with them in order to help resolve some ongoing conflict there. I'll also say that the shareholder proposal process is constantly being reevaluated. It's often under threat, and that does necessitate pushing for representatives on Capitol Hill in DC to maintain the shareholder proposal process. We feel like this is an important lever that we can pull in order to express our values and bend corporate accountability and behavior in the right direction. And so just last year, Azad representatives, along with many in the faith-based community, met with congressional staff to explain the importance of shareholder advocacy. And we encouraged action on behalf of our elected representatives to safeguard that shareholder proposal process. You'll see a photo of some of the attendees at that lobbying day on your screen right now. So some parting thoughts here, just to reiterate. Shareholder advocacy is a way to work for justice, human rights, and corporate responsibility in these uncertain political times that we're living in. I hope that we've been able to give you a broad overview of the topic and to start those gears turning and for you all to be thinking about how best to activate your assets, whether it's through Azad Asset Management or on your own. We'd like to be able to have that conversation with you and start that process. There's a growing movement pushing for conscious capitalism informed by an ethical worldview. I feel like we're doing our part at Azad. Whether you join us in our advocacy or use your investments elsewhere to press for change, it's important that Muslims participate in this financial activism. Unfortunately, all too often am the only Muslim participant or the only representative of a Muslim organization at these multi-faith responsible investor gatherings. We want to see more folks involved, and we want to help give you the tools to get there. And we hope that today's presentation has helped move you in that direction. So that's going to do it for us. Concludes today's presentation. If you would like more information, please do reach out to us. Our email address is hello@azadasset.com. And be sure also to follow us on social media, where we update folks on our shareholder proposals and our initiatives. The handle for our Facebook and YouTube accounts is @AzadFunds. You can also find us on LinkedIn under our full name, Azad Asset Management. Thank you so much for your time today, and we will be in touch.